Welcome to Parent from CGN. I'm your host, Brennan Barnard. And at CGN, we pride ourselves on getting you in the room with experts, from admission leaders to counselors to financial aid experts, thought leaders. And tonight's panelists have expertise in their own respective careers, but the experience that matters to you as an audience is their role as parents, just like you. The only difference is their kids are in college. And like my good friend Rick Clark, who's the director of admission at Georgia Tech, likes to say, when our kids are young and we're trying to potty train them, we don't look to other parents who are trying to also potty train their kids. We look to somebody who's like that one stage ahead, who's already done it, for advice. And so that, with that same kind of idea tonight, I'm joined by three panelists who have been there, done that, and we have Trish Gardner from Moscow, Idaho, home of the University of Idaho, where her daughter is attending, and Nisi Harbor, who's from Fort Worth, Texas, whose daughter is at Texas State University in San Marcos, and Rob Lipsey, who's from Colorado, who has a son at the University of Southern California, and another going into the 12th grade this fall. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let them all brag about their children in a moment, but first we want to hear from you. So those of you who are joining us tonight, if you could, and we're going to use the comment display there, and if you could click join the chat and make comments, submit your questions for our panelists. But go in there now and just share where your Zoom you're kind of coming in from. I like to say, like, I'm always stuck on the zooming, right? You're always zooming in somewhere. Where you're joining from, and what grade your child is in. So if you can put that in the comments now, that'd be great. And while they do that, I want to give you each a minute or so to just kind of give us some background on your children and how their journey went in this college admission experience. So Trish, let's start with you.
Okay. My daughter has written since she was young, loves to write stories, scripts. So she was interested in writing for film and television. She wanted to go to Los Angeles, where it's really happening. And so we traveled there and looked at several schools. She decided on two that she wanted to apply to. We went through kind of an elaborate creative resume process and the rest of the application process. These were two of the top schools in the nation for film. And she got into both. She got 50% of the cost covered in aid. And unfortunately, that still wasn't enough. My mother passed away, so I was going to have funds show up in future years, and we were afraid that the aid would decrease and that we'd be in the position of telling her, I'm sorry, we can't do it anymore. You have to come home. And we thought that that would not be a good scenario. So we recommended that she go to the local state school and that she could do it on the cheap, take as long as she wanted, explore whatever she wanted, and take as many dance classes because she loves to take dance or loves to dance. So she's been performing a lot. She's not a dance major, and yet I think she's learning how important it is to her, and she's actually considering possibly pursuing a performing career in between her undergrad and her graduate school. So I think that's an opportunity she wouldn't have been able to look at if she had gone to a high-powered screenwriting program.
Yeah, some twists and turns along the way. We'll definitely return to that in a bit. And it looks like we have a bunch of folks, some who have 9th and 10th and 11th graders, but also a bunch of folks who have seniors. And so we might talk a little bit about the transition to college as well. So Rob, do you want to give us kind of a snapshot?
Sure. So my son also had some twists and turns. He, in his junior year, at the beginning of his junior year, he decided that he wanted to attend a military academy. My wife and I were both very supportive of that. And then he went through, if you intend to do a military academy, it's really important to um, get that process started between your junior and senior year. You want to make sure your applications are in or as much as complete as possible by before you start your senior year. And he was all set for that. And he's a multi-sport athlete. And then during the first soccer game in the fall of his senior year, he dislocated his shoulder and required surgery. And that is a automatic disqualifying medical problem for the military. It doesn't mean you can't overcome it, but it meant that he'd have to go through a waiver process. And he applied to all three academies, and the academies have complications also with needing a member of Congress to provide a nomination.
Right.
So he went through that process. He got his nomination, and then he was waiting for his medical clearance. And during that time frame, he had also applied as backup. He applied early action to several schools, and then applied regular admission to other schools. And the waiver process was bleeding, well into the spring. And during that time frame, he had also applied to ROTC scholarships as a backup. And the interesting thing is, as he was ruminating over the academy process, we visited some schools, and after speaking with other people, he realized he could pursue a military career and also have a normal college experience. And the ROTC scholarships are incredibly generous in terms of tuition. So it basically allows you to go anywhere you'd like with free tuition if you get one of those types of scholarships. And so because of that, and then after visiting schools, he ended up deciding that he'd rather pursue the ROTC route, have a normal college experience, and he ended up going to USC in LA.
And so far, so good?
So far, so good. Yep.
Right.
Shoulders holding up.
Good. Thank you. All right, Nisi.
So my daughter didn't have really many pitfalls except the fact that she was ready to graduate high school. She comes from a charter school that has an IB program, and so that IB diploma program is very, very intense. And so she really already knew what school she kind of had an idea she wanted to go. She wanted to go far. Her dad wanted her to stay close because she's a daddy's baby girl. So, but mom, on the other hand, I'm like, go far, like explore. And so she got accepted to 7 different colleges. Actually, at the charter school she's at, their junior year, they're required to apply to at least 20 different schools, their top schools, their middle schools, their lower schools, just to get them ready for their senior year. So she already had an idea of what school she wanted to go to. It was just about the distance at the time because mom and dad was indifferent about how far or how close she was going to go. But in the end, she did land at Texas State. It was kind of a happy medium because it's only 3.5 hours. It's far enough for her to explore, but close enough for dad to
Dad.
get a hold of her if he wants to. But the only thing I could say is that she was deciding on what she wanted to major in. So my daughter's a dancer as well. She's been dancing all her life. She started off doing gymnastics for a while, and then she went to dance. But she wanted something to where she could be in charge because she's a natural leader. So she landed on communication. So she is a communications major with the dance minor. And the funny thing is, she does more dancing than she does any communication at all. So she's in many dance clubs that she started in high school, and that trickled over to now she's in college. She's an officer of the dance team or group that she's a part of. She's in outside dance groups. They travel and do different shows and taping. So she's on YouTube performing with many groups and things like that already. And so but she was excited with the communication major because it allowed her to be the boss and show her production side of dancing in illustrations. So she kind of like got a great both worlds. She's having fun. So I'm happy for her, as long as she's, she's making A's and B's. So I'm
Great.
excited. And Texas State was also affordable for us as well, because that was one thing that was a decision breaker or maker for us. Even though she did get accepted to 7 different colleges around the state, it was still about what could we afford in the end. And Texas State ended up being the happy medium for us.
Thanks. Yeah, and close enough so you can go see her dance every once in a while.
Yes, yes.
That's great. That's great. So for those of you who are just joining us, please feel free, and those of you who just kind of heard the different stories, feel free to put questions in the comments, either for certain individuals or just for anyone to answer. And while they do that, Trish, maybe I'll start with you. Just as you kind of went through the college admission experience, how did you balance the roles of being supportive without kind of taking over the decision making process? Oh, I think you're muted.
I went to college initially 40 years ago, and surprisingly, it's changed a lot. So I felt there was a lot that I had to offer in some uh, aspects, but also it was very different, the process. So I'm not sure if I did it well. Certainly, I let her drive when we were on the computer. And I guess maybe I would say that I find that people often base decisions on assumptions without having researched things well. And I think my daughter did that too. And I think I may have uh, exemplified that for her at times. So I think really one of the things that is very important is to demonstrate an open mind for our kids and demonstrate what research looks like. And you can't know what you don't know. And so when you're on these websites, they are so complex and there is so much information. And it is a web to try and get all your questions answered. So you really have to go in with patience and an open mind. And so I think being able to step back and ask your child the questions that you would like them to research and helping them find the pathways to dig the information out. And also, I think making it fun, make some brownies, a milkshake, make an event of it and schedule it. I know it was a challenge sometimes just to find a time when we would both be able to sit down in front of the computer and go through this process. And it was a huge process, especially because she was applying to these arts-based programs where the school and the university had a kind of a complex process.
Right. And also often auditions or portfolios and things like that. And you make a good point about the kind of the research, right? That I often think that being a good college applicant is like being a good college student, right? Being curious, being really intentional about your research and how you go about it. So that's a really great point. Nisi, kind of as you look back, what lessons did you learn in the process, or what did you wish you had known or done differently?
Who do financial aid earlier.
Th- this year was
Save.
this year was kind of a challenge.
Yes, save as much as you can, because when you are a freshman in college, you are a broke freshman in college. Um, that was like our biggest obstacle. My daughter doesn't drive, and so but at Texas State, they're lucky to have what they call like a e-cab or like a Uber cab for college. We did not have anything like that, not even close, in my little college. But it's good for them because she's able to go to the store and move around and things like that, on their campus. So it was really a blessing for her to land, at Texas State because they offer so many, opportunities and things for the students. But I would say saving earlier, and knowing what your financial responsibilities are going to be. Even though it was affordable, her first semester, like her first half a semester, I end up having to go down to Texas State because the financial aid office was holding paperwork or didn't process her information, and we thought that she was going to have to move out of her dorm. We thought we was going to have to come up with like $6,000, and we were clueless, like, what, oh my god, what are we going to do? Like, you can't leave, you got a whole rest of the semester to go before your freshman year, what's happening? And so having those conversations early on, with the different departments, it helps. I was able to get one of her high school counselors to be kind of an additional advocate, for her, on the campus, because the counselor was very versed in knowing the process of getting kids into college and following them during college. And so we were able to call and talk to the right people, because sometimes in college you have your college students working in the financial aid office in different places, and so things get a little jumbled, paperwork get lost, things like that. And that's what it was really all about. In the end, she ended up getting a refund to where she can, buy groceries for the rest of the semester.
That's
So
great.
which helped. But before that, like, thinking that, oh my god, we have to drive 3.5 hours, I have to come pick you up, you have to move out of your apartment for a week, and then you have to move back in until your aid comes in. And so having the right communication with your business office, your financial aid office, the different, because all of them always don't talk to each other. And so having that open communication with them really helps a lot, because if we knew that at the beginning, it would have saved us so much trouble.
That's a great point. And identifying someone in that office that's kind of your go-to person, right? And that can start really early in the application process, right? Like
Yes.
identifying someone in the financial aid office that can be, because they're great resources.
Yes.
So thank you. All right, Rob. Trish was talking a little bit about communication. Can you talk a little more about kind of effective communication strategies that helped you and your son as you were thinking about the experience?
Sure. So the couple things. One was I could feel him getting locked into making his decision again with, for example, with the military academy very early. And it was really important to me to try and manage his emotional state so that, um, those are very challenging to get into. There were things that weren't in his control. And so I wanted to try and steer him towards not locking in, um, emotionally into a particular college, especially like the type of schools he was applying to. The acceptance rates were very low, and we have a good open communication relationship. So being able to talk to him about this was easy. But of course, they lack the perspective. When I had gone through the college process many years ago. I did not get into my number one choice school, and I was looking at another private college, and a professor there, when I was touring it before I accepted where I eventually went, he was like, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Virginia," and he was like, "Oh, I'm from Virginia too." And he was like, "Did you apply to your state schools?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You should go to one of your state schools instead of coming here and blowing your money." And I'm in engineering. He's like, he was an engineer as well. And he's like, you can go anywhere for graduate school, and in engineering, they'll pay you to do it. So it's not worthwhile. And so I relay that type of story and other perspectives, just having
Yeah.
that many kids, don't necessarily get into their first place, but end up, somewhere that they truly love. Most people end up where they truly love and reflecting upon it later.
That's well said. Of course, that admission office probably didn't know that the professor was thwarting their efforts.
Probably not.
Yeah. Trish, and those of you who are joining us, if you have questions for any of our guests, please put them in the comments there. Trish, can you talk a little bit about handling situations where expectations from parents differ from their children? And you talked a little bit about some of the challenges that you all went through as you went through the experience, but how do you handle those differing expectations, or maybe disappointment on a student's part, that kind of thing?
I guess I have two thoughts, and one is that you have to be really clear on what the non-negotiables for you are as a parent, and calmly and politely, if you can, explain them, hopefully in advance. And I think if we think about that and get clear on that, we do our kids a service, and then recognize with the things that are negotiable that our students may make mistakes and they may fail. In our eyes, it may look like a failure, but those failings are learning experiences, and we do our kids a disservice if we deprive them of those. When they experience pain and frustration and financial hardship, I mean, those are all really valuable lessons. And I think things have kind of changed over time. I think that, my parents were so uninvolved in my process of going to college. And I think parents are a lot more involved in their kids' lives. And I think it's easy to want to protect them from pain. And I think it's okay to say, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you, but I believe in you. And I think you're resilient and you're strong and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, and what you say, I think, about setting those expectations and conditions early is huge, right? Because it's when we get down to the final months of getting acceptances and that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden having conversations is a lot more layered and difficult than if we, from the very start, and things change, of course, but from the very start, kind of setting that aside. And to that point, Nisi, maybe you talked a little bit about the financial planning process. We have some ninth grade parents and folks on here. What would you say to them about kind of starting to think about financial planning for college? Like you said start early, but what's that look like? What should they start to be thinking about in terms of costs?
So actually, when my daughter was a freshman, someone advised me to plan early, and I had no idea what that looked like. And so later on, when she got older, I was like, oh, you know what? I should have started you like a little savings account over to the side, because she had like little jobs here and there when she was in high school, well, within the limit of what mom would let her have.
Right.
But and then people would, give her money for different things. And so I was like, man, I wish I would have like put like some type of little savings account over to the side for you. So that way it would have built up by the time you was a senior. Even if you would have had any financial issues, we would have had something to fall back on or something to cover it, or, whatever needs that you needed for your freshman year, or even some of the things that you wanted off of your wish list when you graduated, because she made a wish list for graduation. I want blankets, I want pillows, I want things for my walls and things like that. And so I'm like, oh man, if we would have opened up your savings account your ninth grade year, we wouldn't have had to pay for anything. It would have already been covered. And so having some type of financial plan at the beginning of ninth grade year, I think is important, because I think it would have saved us so much additional help that we've needed.
Right. Yeah. And Brandy in the comments here makes a good point that it's also a good opportunity to teach them to budget and all those kinds of things, right?
Yes, because she didn't start budgeting until her senior year, and she got a job, and like now I
Right.
want to save for this and go here, and well,
Right. And I was saying to you all at the before the show that I have a senior in high school and a sophomore in college, so I am experiencing these same kinds of push and pulls myself. So, um, Rob, can you talk a little bit about tools that or resources that you found useful as you were navigating this experience with your child?
Sure. The internet was good. Specifically,
I've heard of it. I've heard of
yeah.
that. Yeah.
You know what's interesting is actually Reddit. It was an amazing resource because there are both parents and students very active on specific college sites as well as like general. Gosh, I can't. There's one huge thread that I can't remember what it's called, but they'll do things. Sometimes they have some insights. Students who are there at the college have some insights, or who have gone through the process. Parents have insights. They often even, like, I remember one of the schools he applied to. They had figured out something on the web portal that you could even tell whether they had gotten accepted before the acceptances had come out, because if
Oh gosh.
an extra tab showed up, you were in. So like those were great. But they can also be depressing because you're
I was gonna
seeing
say, yeah.
amazingly qualified students, or at least presented on Reddit, and you're like, there's no way my child is going to get in based on the quality of the students. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of good audiobooks available. If you have Spotify, they're free on the college decision process. Well, they're included with the premium membership, that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, guidance counselor is a great resource. Other
Yeah.
parents, the year above.
Yeah, I would and like you said, I think the Reddit piece it's tough, right? I mean, a lot of stuff out there on the internet should come with a warning label around college, because a lot of times it can be helpful and you can get insight, but it also can come with a lot of misinformation, right? And
Very true.
yeah, and like you said, on social media or in Reddit, you see things as people report it, and sometimes that it looks like a lot of people are getting denied or a lot of people are getting in, and it's kind of skewed sometimes, but it can also provide some insight. I think that's really helpful, and like you said, guidance counselors, school counselors, I, you know Trish, maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of how to, as a parent, how to engage with a student's school counselor in really useful ways. Like what are good ways to engage with the school and the school counselor to support your child in this experience?
I think developing a good relationship and having your child connect with them and recognize that is a relationship that can help them as they transition to adulthood. Also connecting with teachers and thinking of them as not just the person I have to put my assignments, send my assignments to, but a person who had teachers themselves that helped them, and thinking of these people as people who really are invested in you because your success is a positive reflection on them. And I had a hard time convincing my daughter of that idea, that no, they don't just want you to succeed because they're good people. Well, they are good people and they do for that reason, but also it is a source of achievement for them to have students succeed. In our case, there was an amazing, or still is, an amazing scholarship program in our community that was not part of the school. And it was an opportunity. We learned about through connections, and my daughter made the decision to join and be a part of this scholar program. And it was actually far superior to anything that she got in her high school. The high school had great counselors, and we appreciate them. But the opportunity to participate in a scholar program that focused specifically on building your resume, learning to do the college admission process, guests were brought in via Zoom and in person, the opportunity to have interviews. So I recommend that people look for that kind of program in their community.
Yeah, that's helpful. And a lot of times, school counselors will have resources about what programs like that are available in the community, and what they can, and programs like that they can apply to. That's helpful. So go ahead, please.
I just wondered if I could make a comment on finances as well, or if there's a better time later on.
No, have at it. Have at it, please.
I agree that it's extremely important to teach our kids about finance, and that a savings account for them, or a limited credit card, or a custodial account through an investment company are all great ideas. But it is interesting that on the FAFSA, your child's funds will be expected to be used at a higher percentage than your funds. So you wouldn't want to put your money in your child's name, or you may even want to sort of shelter the money that they earn. Of course, the FAFSA changes a lot, but I do believe it's still much higher percentage that is expected of your child's funds to contribute to their college payments.
Yeah, and I think they altered the formula some this year, percentage wise. I'm not positive, but I think they did some of that. But what you say is important to understand how much each person's assets, each and the parents and the students' assets are being kind of looked at and incorporated into the formula.
I was wondering if I could
please.
talk about the ROTC scholarship program.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to do it now or later.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. In terms of financial aid, if the ROTC pathway is actually incredibly generous, and it's something that we didn't become aware of until the beginning of the senior year. There's a Army one, there's a Navy one, and there's an Air Force one, at least the ones for the one set that my son applied to. And they're varying difficulty to get, but if you have a smart kid who's athletic and is willing to do 4 years of service, you can basically get 100% tuition even at the most expensive private schools. You're not guaranteed that. They have partial scholarships, but the most generous of the scholarships are full tuition. In fact, this year my son's tuition and room and board were paid for, and he was given a travel allowance to and from school, and he was paid each month, and he got a book allowance. So we ended up making money off of his college from his freshman year. And at USC, I think the published tuition rate is something over $90,000. So instead of that, it was
he funneled that back to you, right?
It came back to me, right? Well, some of it did. His pay he gets to keep, but the rest of the stuff was out of pocket. And it turns out, it's interesting, I didn't know this, but with your 529, if you have a 529 savings plan, if you get a tax-exempt scholarship, which these ROTC scholarships are, you can withdraw the funds from the 529 with no penalty. So you don't lose your funds. If you've piled it up for your child, you can then start to withdraw it, and you only pay the tax rate on the gains, no penalty for withdrawing early.
Yeah. Thank you. Nisi, maybe you could talk a little bit about, there's a question here from Fatma about, how do you know if the school is a right fit? So you said your daughter applied to 20 schools, right? And got into a number of them. And how did you start to figure that out?
So how we landed on Texas State, earlier we talked about the research process, and so that's what we started. Like the schools that you're applying for, while you're applying for them, look at what their ratings are when it comes to certain majors. Are they good with certain majors, or do they specify in certain, in majors? And so she already knew that she wanted to do communication and she wanted to minor in dance. And it just so happened that Texas State happened to be a great school with communication. We went to visit, and that's how we fell in love. We went well, the day when they offered for us to come visit, we can go to the different majors, like seminars for the different
Right.
majors.
Yeah.
And so when we went, she was like, "Oh, this is it. This is like the perfect thing right here." And so how her dance came up is that when we were walking the campus, there was flyers up for different dance organizations and things that you can be a part of. And so she started, when we were there, like signing up for different things. And I'm like, "You don't even go to this school yet. Like, you signing up for stuff." And so people started connecting with her even before she applied. And so she started to get friends and have communication with different people across campus even before she even hit campus. And so being able to actually see what the school offered while we were there, and she was able to already make friends and things like that before she even went, was like a game changer. She was like, "Oh, this is the right school." Like, she just blew off all the other schools she got accepted. So I was like, "Wait a minute, I thought you said you wanted to go to XYZ." And she was like, "Well, I did, but I'm having fun." I was like, "Okay." So that research process is very important, because you get a chance to see again what schools offers, what the schools really look like, and then visiting like that is an eye opener, because sometimes you may want to go somewhere that you think is going to be great, and then when you go actually get on campus, it's like, this is not anything that I was expecting from what I saw,
Right.
from what I read. So visiting the campuses, I think, is another key, to knowing exactly where you want to be, because some of the schools that she thought that she was going to go to, she looks at it now and she's like, "I would not have been happy at all." And so yeah, so knowing where you want to go and then taking a visit.
Yeah, that's helpful. I'm Trish and Rob. I'm going to turn to both of you because Nisi started to talk kind of about some of those early connections and the transition to college. We have a number of senior parents with us tonight. What did your children have trouble with maybe as they transitioned to college? Were there any like certain skills or essentials that um, you wish they knew about before they went to college, or tips you have for other parents as they send their children off to college next fall that might be helpful? Maybe Rob, will start with you and then Trish.
Sure. So that's a really interesting question. So one, I think it was harder on my wife and I than it was on him.
Yeah, I hear you.
Especially the first one off to college. It's interesting. So it's a 2-hour flight. It's 1,000 miles away from where we live. So we obviously couldn't go visit him. We dropped him off on a Saturday, and Sunday night we gave him a call, and he sounded really dejected. The first night he spent, and we're like, "What's up?" And he's like, he used these exact words. He says, "I haven't found my people yet." And it was real obviously one day, and he's the first person from his high school to ever attend that college, so there was no natural connection there. But it was interesting. So we called him again Monday night, and he was ecstatic. He he made a choice to live in a dorm style, like not a suite, but like on a hall. Sorry, not a dorm, but a hall
Yeah,
style.
yeah,
And
yeah.
he ended up he highly recommended that, like all of his friends who are still in high school, he strongly recommended, because you build a whole many more connections, because you can just move from room to room. If you stay in a suite, people tend to just hang out with their suite mates. He said it was really important not to try and hang out with your high school friends, but try and branch out quickly. The ROTC naturally encouraged him to meet other people. He got involved in intramural sports, which was huge. Football games was a monster boost to his emotional state, just because that starts right at the beginning of school, and it was something to bond with your fellow classmates.
That's really helpful. Yeah. I mean, there's always it happens to every student. Sometimes early, sometimes later. There's always that moment where it's like, have I found my people, or are these the right people, or am I in the right place? Trish, any thoughts on kind of transition to college?
For my daughter, she's in her hometown, so she has all of her childhood connections still here. So she's pretty well connected. My concern was whether she would step out of that and keep meeting people and keep growing her skills and her desires in the way that she did in high school that built such a good resume. I thought, I guess I was concerned that by going to the hometown school, she might not then aspire to greater things as she had when she was younger. And I didn't want her to become jaded and think that dream was no longer possible. So I just keep encouraging her to, keep doing the things that she loves, and she really does. She keeps growing. She keeps meeting new people. So I think it's I just have to accept she does it at her own pace, not mine necessarily.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Nisi, do you have anything to add about the college transition before we kind of do a last round of questions?
No.
Okay. So I'm gonna, as we wrap up here, I want to ask you each to answer a question, and that's kind of besides the financial aid piece, what's kind of your top tip for younger parents? Like if you were to put yourself back, 2-3 years, what would you tell yourself then that now, whether it's about transition or about the admission experience or just about parenting? What would you tell yourself? And maybe we'll go Rob, Nisi, and then Trish.
Sure. So there's there's often going to be a lot of disappointment in terms of acceptances, especially if they're applying to very low acceptance rate schools. So trying to manage expectations early. The one thing that I wish, like given the set of schools that he applied to in his senior year, I wish we had known more about like what schools were looking for, because from what I remember when I was a kid, it was being a well-rounded student was the thing that everybody was looking for. So having some strong extracurricular, good academics, etc. But now it seems they've moved to wanting pointy students, or they call it raindrop, where they're very specialized in some area, and typically that area is something unique, because they want to build a well-rounded class, but not necessarily out of well-rounded students at a lot of these top schools. At least that's what I've been told, and that's what it seems based on what I see on campus. So
yeah, and some are well-rounded and some are more pointy, but right, it's not the same where everyone was well-rounded, right? Like,
yeah,
there's a little more nuanced, I think, understanding of what they're looking for now than when we were probably going through it. So thank you. All right, Nisi.
Yeah, so I agree. I actually agree with Rob. Like, have all expectations. Like some rejections are not bad. Some rejections are probably blessings. So just depends on what how you look at it. And so having those expectations up front, eases your mind a lot, because it's usually when you think that you're going to go somewhere and it just doesn't happen, it's like you give up and you give up hope. And so you don't want to be in that boat, surely, when you're trying to figure out somewhere to go. The other thing I would say, is build a resume. And so one thing I taught my daughter is, apply for your college like you're applying for a job. Do you have enough essays? Do you know how to write essays? Are you into, enough of your extracurricular activities? Are your academics on point? Are you showing a balance of the kind of scholar that you really are? Not a student, but a scholar that you really are. So, and she took that, because she has two separate resumes. She has a one that she used for school, and then one she used for her job, but it shows, who she really is. And sometimes it allow her to recognize her strengths and her weaknesses, of herself. And so, again, build who the person that that you are when you're applying to some of these schools. Because sometimes, like we said, it's not all about, what you've done in school. Is about, they're trying to get their percentages up and things like that. Actually, Texas State, they're actually going to, accept more freshmen, this upcoming, school year than they did this past school year. When my daughter got in, they let us know, like, hey, this is the biggest freshman class that we have accepted before, and so it's going to grow, next year. And so, but her being part of that acceptance was what she did in school, the things that she showed, that put her on top to be part of that group of students that got accepted.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. All right, Trish, bring us home.
I really agree with Nisi about the resume. They call it now a brag sheet, right? So I told my daughter as a freshman, write down everything that you do that could be a job or volunteerism or part of your creative resume, or just shows your skills. So you mow the lawn for the neighbor, and I, open the Google Doc for her and show her how to do it. Mr. Brown mowed lawn summer 21. And everything she did, I would ask her, did you add that to your brag sheet? And she eventually reached the point where she was saying, yeah, I already did. And by the time she went to apply for college, she had an amazing assortment of things to cherry pick from. And so I think that that's really important, helping your kids recognize that these are things that could be used in their resume. And for my daughter, one of the things she put on her creative resume, she spent 4 hours locked in her bedroom creating a stop motion animation to a musical, a song from a musical. And it was an amazing work of art. And so it's not always the obvious things that show your skills. And I think as parents, it's really important that we recognize that what our kid is passionate about is probably has a career possibility behind it. And so encourage your kids to respect what they're passionate about.
I love that point. That's a great place to end. And clearly you are all proud of your children, and as you should be, because it sounds like they're all headed in wonderful directions and for future success. So we're really grateful for you all joining us tonight.